Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us to stay curious. Beside me today is a really wonderful influencer and communicator that you're going to get to know. This is his first appearance on Stay Curious, Mr. Lee Wilson.
Hi, nice
Great.
to be here.
Well, nice to you to be here, Lee. And those of you that are familiar with Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, Lee has been a communicator out there for how long?
About 2 years.
About 2 years out there. And you might hear him in the Rocket Garden talking. That's shown there. Delaware North, of course, operates Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex. We're grateful for their support of our museum and loaning us people like Nick Thomas, who you know well,
Yeah, I know Nick.
extraordinary communicator out there. Nick may be on next Monday or the Monday after that. We always like having Nick on a Monday once a month, and he's going to cook up a program for you. We talked about movies last time. I had fun with that.
Yeah.
But you're going to enjoy this conversation with and getting to know Lee Wilson. He is a space geek, but he's also an artist, and this is part of your work back here. Explain what our green screen is. By the way, do not adjust your sets. We're broadcasting in color. Okay, two gray-haired old men in our
That's
black
my
and white there.
shirt.
But let's see. Oh, here's the
Apollo
American
Saturn.
flag. There's the proof that we have some color here.
Oh, and my Space Hipsters button is blue. So
There you go. So you all know I'm a flag-waving, space-loving American here. So, but Marty is behind the board here today. Marty Winkel, my big brother, sort of, and partner in crime for 4 years on this, Lee. And Marty even said, "Hey, the show looks like it's in black and white." So, Lee, tell. First, before I get wound up with Lee, because I know there's some stargazers out there, Lee.
Yes, okay.
And they're going to be hearing in social media that there's an eclipse of the full moon tomorrow. The harvest moon is going to be eclipsed. About 8 o'clock tomorrow night, but it's only going to be covered up by the Earth's shadow, just this amount. About less than 10% of the moon is going to be in the Earth's shadow. The Earth is just going to the edge of this cone that we project out in space, like all objects do. You even project a shadow on a sunny day. So, so don't lose your mind about this eclipse tomorrow. It's just going to look like this at the maximum, but you'll still see it like that. So throw some binoculars on it and get you a little moonshine, like I like to say there.
Good.
So, and we're not going to have another total lunar eclipse for another year and a half, I think, in there. But we always like you keep looking up at that beautiful moon up there. And we're going to talk about the moon today and the 6 landing sites, as Lee is very much into using science in your art. And I'll let you explain that in a minute.
Okay.
But Marty, you'll get a kick out of this. I looked at your Facebook, and Lee and I are pretty kindred spirits, because this is one of my favorite Christmas gifts that Marty got me. Caution, might start talking randomly about astronomy. And you have this on your website
Yeah.
there that I love. Your square jar, and then your jar for telling people about space when they didn't ask.
Didn't ask, that's right. Yeah.
And you see the dollar bills go in the one
It's
where
an
people
expensive
don't.
habit. Yes,
But you know what? No one anyone ever told you to shut up? I don't want to hear about that.
Not really, no.
No. See, that's the paradox of where we live in. Everybody is interested in space, you
Yes,
know.
yes.
Lee, are you Star Wars or a Star Trek guy?
Both.
Both. Okay. He says both. He's playing it politically correct. I'm more Star Trek, but and everybody loves when you're talking about space.
Yes.
But when it comes to getting in their wallet, the taxpayers, they would love to support it, I think, more than that. Half a cent on every dollar is all NASA gets, right?
Yeah.
Half a cent
Yeah.
of every taxpayer's dollar, where the Department of Defense gets like 40 cents of
It
every
used to be
dollar.
like 20
Think about
times
that.
much
Think
during
about
Apollo.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Marty, yes.
How much did you say?
The Department of Defense of our national budget, I'm guessing it's 40%.
The total budget with less than 1/10 of 1%.
Or NASA's
For
budget.
NASA's budget.
NASA.
I'm talking about the DOD,
Oh,
Department of Defense budget. Our military gets about 40 cents on the dollar. And yes, NASA gets their 25 billion or 22 billion represents 1/2 cent of every dollar that you taxpayers spend. So, but anyway, hope you laughed like I did at your mason jars there. That made my morning when I was researching us here
Good.
on there. And there's a couple pictures of Lee I'm going to show you here before we get him wound up. There he is out at the Saturn V Center where Marty met you a little bit ago.
That's my favorite tour.
Oh, that's got to be everybody's favorite tour. It's just done so well. That is a real command module,
It
correct?
is, yes.
For what was that going to be used? Remember?
Well, I understood as a rescue vehicle for Skylab, they had stripped it out on the inside.
That's what come to my mind there. And then, of course, at the other end of the Saturn V rocket is lunar module tail number 9 that Grumman built. That was going to be Apollo 15, but they wanted to take a rover on 15, and that's the lower descent stage wasn't configured for that.
Right,
So
it
they
wasn't
just
designed for a 3-day mission either.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to hear a lot about Lee's artwork, science-based artwork. He's got a Facebook page. He's got a
YouTube page.
YouTube page and a website. And it's not talking to Lee. I know it's not to make a bunch of money. It's to just
Educate
in a different way. And when it comes to the complexities of outer space and understanding it, any way you can get it across, I think, and art is just a perfect medium to do that on there.
Blending
And
art and science.
so we're going to ask Lee here a little bit about, tell us where you grew up and when did you get the space bug and all that.
Well, I'm a small town boy from Western Kentucky. Grew up in a 3,500 population.
What town?
A little town called Morganfield.
Morganfield, Kentucky. Now, is that southern Kentucky?
Western Kentucky.
All right,
so
Western
we were about 10 miles from Indiana and Illinois.
Okay.
So that tri-state area.
So you're away from the coal mines.
No, we had coal mines.
Did you have coal mines there?
Coal mines and hogs.
Okay.
That was about it.
Well, where did the spark come from?
Can you hear me okay?
A little bit louder.
Okay. All right.
Where did the spark come from? A teacher, a friend?
Kindergarten teacher was an artist. She saw that in me. And I was 9 years old when we landed on the moon. I've been a big space fan ever since that. So I remember it was one Saturday morning on CBS, Walter Cronkite sitting there talking about the launch. And I was just glued to the TV set. It was the coolest thing.
Well, it's always interesting where the seed's planted, and then like myself, Lee's just mushroomed with the attention here. But you had aspirations to be an artist first, though, right? Graphic artist you studied.
Yeah, it was a lot of things. I mean, art and science. But when I was a kid, I mean, I would get the telescope, I would get the chemistry set, and the microscope and everything. But I also drew. And I was an artist in high school. I was a yearbook photographer, so I was always finding ways to blend art and science, and it just kind of continued. Most of my adult life was in marketing and advertising, so you had to use, computers were new at that time, what they used to call desktop publishing.
Desktop
so
publishing.
having
Wow.
technical ability and creative ability at the same time, I did a lot of that. I worked in a publishing house in Nashville. And then I wound up being self-employed, my own little one-man advertising agency for a long time. And then around 2008, 2009, I got interested in rekindling my art. I had actually spent 3 years at Murray State University as an art major. Then the computer bug bit me, and I spent 2 years at Southern Illinois University and got a computer graphics degree. So again, blending art and science. It's interesting, this came to me, one of my inspirations at that time was a guy named James Blinn. Do you remember him?
James
Blinn.
No, it
He
doesn't.
did the original computer animations for the Voyager program and showed us what it was going to be like. And I just thought that was the coolest thing back then. This is back in the early 80s, and before Voyager had gotten very far. So yeah, it was pretty cool. And then high school, I was enthralled by Voyager. I did a term paper on Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 about looking for life on Mars. And so all of that just kind of worked itself together. And it really didn't congeal until after I transferred from doing beach and tropical from around 2009 to around 2014. And then, and of course, in 1980, Carl Sagan did his famous Cosmos series on
Yes.
PBS, and that was one of the most. I mean, I was so impressed by what Carl Sagan did and the way he did it. You know, he was not only an astronomer but an educator and a poet, and he did all three very well, and that just got my attention. And one of the things he said was, I remember this very clearly, there were more stars in the cosmos than there were grains of sand in all the beaches of the earth. And they're just, I'm just, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Try to imagine how
You
many
just go to
stars that
Cocoa
is.
Beach and you're like all that
Exactly.
sand, and
That's
you're
right.
like, wait a minute.
All the beaches of the earth, there's
Yeah.
more stars than that, And then in 2014, a new version of Cosmos came out, directed by or produced by Anne Druyan, who was Carl Sagan's second wife,
Uh-huh.
called Cosmos: A Space-Time Odyssey. And they updated a lot of what we knew about the cosmos at that point, including anthropology. And then all the special effects and everything was just light years. It was 35 years after the original Cosmos, and it just blew me away. And I remembered what Carl Sagan said about the beaches being the grains of sand of the stars of the cosmos. And I thought that was my transition between my beach and tropical paintings and the cosmos paintings. And so I looked at the cosmos as a cosmic ocean. And it's an ocean of stars. And you see back in time when you look at the stars, and there's all kinds of things that combine the art and science together. And I started painting about those topics.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, the great communicator that he is, did that Cosmos redo
That's right.
sort of
He was
thing.
the host of the show.
And I enjoyed both of them. Like you, Carl Sagan was just an amazing communicator. He was on the late night show with Johnny Carson
Oh, I
like
remember those.
100
Yeah.
times or
Yeah.
something like that.
He popularized astronomy.
Yeah, he really did.
Yeah.
There were other popularizers throughout history, of course. One of them was Percival Lowell,
That's right. Yeah.
who was
Yeah.
convinced 100 and some
I've
years
been to
ago
Lowell
that
Observatory. Yeah.
Mars was inhabited, and he
Mhm.
wrote about the canals and so forth.
Canale. Yeah.
And that's why we're here. We love communicating with you all out there about this. And Marty's got a comment from somebody that's watching today.
We have a comment from Jack Kennedy.
Oh, hey, Jack.
The DOD got 13.3% of the 2023 federal budget.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. There's someone's on top of the budget. They got 13.3 and NASA got 0.5. All right. And they got their whole known military space program and everything like that. Thank you. I was way off there on saying 40%. I can't get the comments on here on my smartphone, but we'll work on that another time. I don't want to be distracted from talking to Lee Wilson here, E. Lee Wilson Jr.
Mhm.
And the E is for
Ernest.
Ernest.
I'm a junior. My dad, Ernest Lee Wilson Sr., actually, his birthday was last Monday. I was going to be doing this on his birthday. So I was going
Oh.
to shout out, hey, Dad,
all right.
on there. So he's going to get to see this instead. But that's okay.
I was telling you about my little astronomy parody show. We would do a talk about in earnest.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm talking to you in earnest. And where is Ernest? Well, Ernest is in Kentucky, just south of Millersburg. Okay, in there.
There you go. Yeah, without the A.
In there. So you're going to see some great artwork. We're going to hear some good stories here. Did you? How did you get to Kennedy Space Center? How'd that happen?
Well, that's an interesting story. I have been living in Nashville most of my adult life.
Nashville, Tennessee.
Nashville,
Okay.
Tennessee. And then in 2012, we started doing, my girlfriend at the time, Kat, she was amazing. She was the one who got me back into creating art again ever since college. I hadn't really created much at all since then. And my drawing teacher, Dale Lays, is out there. Hey, Dale. He was from Murray State. He was one of the people that influenced me in my artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting because we started doing these art festivals with the tropical and beach work mostly in Florida. And we'd do 2 or 3 art festivals in Florida, then go back to Nashville and create some more work. And it was an interesting experience because in the process, we pretty much went throughout Florida from Apalachicola all the way to Key West, doing shows, and I fell in love with Florida, and I decided I didn't like winter anymore,
Yeah.
and wound up moving down here about 7 or 8 years ago, and over in the west coast of Florida, so just north of Tampa in the Pasco County area there. We lived
Okay.
there for a number of years. And then about 2.5 years ago, well, it's closer to 3 years ago, the process started. I thought that when I was doing this, my space-related artwork, that I needed to be where the mecca of space was, which was, of course, Kennedy Space Center in Brevard County. And I thought it would be great to move over this way. And I had a couple of opportunities to move over here that didn't work out. But another one finally did, and we wound up moving over here and living in Cocoa. That's where we live right now. It's kind of central to Brevard County.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's all the art scene down in Melbourne from there on that side, and of course the space scene up in the northern part of Brevard County. And so it's kind of centrally located.
Yeah, it is a good place.
And then a
there.
few months after moving over here, Delaware North had a hiring event. And I thought, oh, it'd be kind of neat to work over there. And I looked at the various jobs, and communicator was one of those. And I thought, ooh, that would be something I think I could do. And so I got hired on as a crew member. So, at Disney, the people who work there are called cast members. Well, at Delaware North, at the visitor complex, they're called crew members. And so I started doing that. I did a lot of various different jobs. I worked in retail. And then there was one of these communicator jobs opened up, and there were like 3 or 4 people that wanted to apply for this. And you had to not only do an interview, you had to do an audition. So they gave you about a 2 or 3 minute introduction that was for an astronomy show. And it was an introduction. You had to memorize that and present it without looking at any notes. And so I did that. I actually corrected a few grammatical errors, and it was actually a astronomical term that wasn't quite right. And I corrected those, and I practiced the heck out of that thing. I got up there and I did that presentation, I did the interview, and for some reason they took a chance on me because they didn't have a lot of real public speaking experience. It was mainly talking about my art, and they took a chance on me, and it took me a while to figure it out, but I finally did, and now it's one of my most favorite things to do in the world.
Great, great. Here we got a picture of you communicating out there at a launch, looks like.
Yeah, launch commentary. That's like the creme de la creme if you're in a communicator.
Okay. Well, of course, we're friends with Bart Martindale.
Yeah,
and,
Bart taught me a lot.
We know Bart. Bart and I showed up about the same time 7 years ago on the scene here. And we're talking to Steve Agid.
Yeah, Steve. He knows more than just about anybody.
Oh, yeah, Steve's a wealth of knowledge.
Yes, he is.
And he loves doing a Stay Curious program. Once in a while, Charlie's out there. Forget Charlie's last name. Marty's always taking our tickets. He's a big collector out there. So we really, it's a lot of fun to go out there. When you go out there, you're hearing people relive history for you, but they're allowed to kind of put your own spin on it. You were telling me.
Yeah, I'm a storyteller, and one of the things that I like to do in each of my tours is turn it into a type of story. So the rocket garden, instead of just going each rocket and talking about the facts and figures and who wrote on it, I tell the story of the space race, starting with Sputnik and how we entered into the space race, and how through the different developments in our rocket technology, we finally got to the moon. We got to the moon before the Soviet Union did, and I do a little Kennedy impression on going to the moon, and I talk about step by step what brought us to Apollo and then to the moon, and then the space race did not end with the moon landing. A lot of people think that that was the end of the space race, and we were still in competition with the Soviet Union. And what I think, and what most people think, the end of the space race was in 1975, the very last Apollo program, the Apollo-Soyuz test project, because that's where we orbited and docked with 2 cosmonauts in a Soyuz spacecraft, did the hatches together. There was an interesting story about the docking mechanism. I won't get into that. And then we shook hands with the 2 cosmonauts, and Tom Stafford, I believe, was the commander of the mission, General Stafford. And that, I think, was the end of the space race, because it ushered in an era of cooperation between the Soviet Union, later Russia, and the United States. And even though things are frosty right now, we are still cooperating on the operation of the International Space Station. We still send American astronauts up on Soyuz, and they send Russians up. We're going to send a Russian up on space on Crew 9 mission.
A week from Wednesday.
Yeah, a week from Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, Lee, that the space race ended in 1975 when Alexei Leonov and Tom Stafford shook hands, and Vance Brand was there on our side with the only flight for Mercury astronaut Deke Slayton.
Oh, that's
And
right. Yeah.
Kubasov was the other Russian on there. We've got
Mhm.
their handprints and names at our Space View
That's
Park.
really cool.
Their handprints are in bronze out there.
Yeah.
But 50 years we're going to be celebrating that.
hmm
And I showed a picture last week on
Yeah, 2025.
with the 12 people on the International Space Station, and in the middle of them is Konyenko, the Russian, with the biggest smile on his face. He has been up in space longer than any human in history, over 1,100 days on 5 missions.
Yeah.
And you know, we're friends of some astronauts like Nicole Stott. You're very good friends with.
Yes.
She's flown with Russians.
Mhm.
I mean,
And
it's
it's
just
interesting.
amazing. There's no borders in space.
Exactly. The overview effect. When you're looking, you've got people from other countries together in space looking down on the Earth, and there are no borders.
Yeah.
You know? And so
The thin blue line,
thin blue
as
line,
Nikki
that's right.
says, is the
Mhm.
only border that matters.
That's
that
right.
Keeps us all in there. So I hope they really do a big 50th anniversary, because this is an example for the world to see how all these countries, particularly the two superpowers,
Mhm.
America and Russia, have cooperated despite what's going on in Europe with Ukraine and all that. But when it comes to space travel, people's lives are on the line, and people
Yeah.
really get serious about, hey, we're just humans.
Yeah. I mean,
on
I've
there.
heard stories, the cupola they have on station has all those windows, and they'll bring, there's a story, I don't remember which astronaut it was. They brought him up to the cupola and then opened the windows, and he was brought to tears because it was so powerful to see
Oh,
the
yeah.
Earth from that perspective.
And a lot of
I
people
think
brought to tears
more
over
people
that.
ought to be able to go up there to see that, and maybe these petty differences we have on Earth
Yeah.
would be not so important.
Well, to that, Lee, we do have people that are going suborbital, and
Mhm.
and it affects them just the same.
Yeah.
You saw William Shatner at age
Oh
90
yeah, I
something.
know. Did you
He
see?
still says that it's changed his life
changed his
completely.
life. Yeah, it's a different
Just
perspective.
that 5 minutes of seeing
Yeah.
the horizon,
It's
and the
profound.
void of space,
Mhm.
and you know, astronauts talk about the black is blacker than any black you've ever seen.
Mhm.
We got black on today. You're like, how could that be,
like that.
Lee? You know,
Well,
but
that's
it's a different-
photography,
yeah.
dynamic range. People talk about, and it's funny. Every so often, I'll get a moon landing denier at my Apollo
No
tour,
way.
Saturn tour. Yeah, because they ask certain questions,
Right. I
and that's
hear you.
one of them. Why were there no? You couldn't see any stars, and I said, well, it all comes down to photography. It's a thing called dynamic range. And if the moon is very bright when the sun's shining on it, when you're standing on the moon, it's very bright. So in order to be able to photograph that, you have to close down the lens of the camera, the aperture down, so you can get the detail on the lunar module and the moon. And so that means you can't see the stars because the camera does not have enough dynamic range to do both at the same time. Even the human eye doesn't have that kind of dynamic range. So you either have to focus on the dark or you have to focus on the light. And on station, I remember Nicole told me that because I asked her, I said, so could you see the stars on station? She says, if the lights are off inside station and you're looking out into space, you see the stars.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's amazing.
Well, we're going to talk about some dynamic ranges of artwork here that you're going to enjoy.
Okay.
But let's, again, we've got some launches going on. They moved the SpaceX launch of the Galileo probe from today to tomorrow, Marty. See, it was going to go today, the 16th, and they moved to the 17th. And then a week from Wednesday, 2 astronauts, Nick Hague and a Russian, will go to the International Space Station for the Crew Dragon 9, not taking Stephanie Wilson or Zena Cardman with them. I wonder how that news went over to them after training for a year for this, to say, by the way, we're going to go take your seats empty so we can bring Sonny and Butch back.
Well, I'm sure they'll
February.
get another chance.
I do too, but Stephanie Wilson's been waiting 12 years to go to space.
Wow.
She was a 3-time shuttle astronaut,
Mhm.
and Zena Cardman's a rookie. So
Yeah.
we'll get you. That would have put a record number 7 women on the
That's
space
true.
station, I think.
Well, space is hard, and we didn't want another shuttle era type
No,
accident.
no, that
so
was a smart
it's
decision.
better to be safe than sorry.
Better. Of
Always.
course, we're glad Starliner made it back safely.
Yeah.
But that was the prudent thing to do because you only get one chance at that. The in yellow are all the launches coming up here on the Space Coast. Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
Okay, we got a question from Jack Kennedy.
Mhm.
Lee, have you considered non-fungible tokens or nano art collectibles you should consider putting the original digital art on the moon with one of the upcoming lunar landers.
Oh, that's interesting. So NFTs, yeah. Actually, I'm working with a company that is going to be related to some things of that. Now, don't have a lunar mission coming up, but there are some things that we're working on that have ways to embed digital elements inside the NFTs of the artwork. So not only it's
NFT is
non-fungible tokens.
okay.
And so it uses something called blockchain technology, like Bitcoin and those things do. And it's really complicated the way it does, but it has to do with the blockchain of these data that are linked together. And you can't break this code because there's all of these put together, and it takes a lot of computing power to keep all that going. And so, but these use that same kind of technology, this blockchain technology. And so it's going to be something I think is pretty exciting. It's still in the very beginning stages, so I can't really say a lot about it right now.
Did Intuitive Machines have some artwork on it when it landed on the moon?
Yeah, Intuitive Machines.
I think they had some sort of an art thing on there. We know
Yeah,
Chris Stott and his
was really
company
cool. It
had
was
a
really
hard
cool.
drive on the moon
Yeah,
on there. But
yeah. So art on the moon, it's pretty cool.
yeah. Well, artists will go anywhere to try to show off their work. And
Yeah.
so good question there, Mr. Kennedy. Thank you for joining Stay Curious today. Show a couple more pictures of you in the work environment there.
That's
Or
actually
one
a picture
more?
by Jack Kennedy. He took that.
Oh, Jack Kenny took that picture.
yeah.
Okay. Well, you got to get a picture of you talking in front of the big VAB there. So
That's right.
that's one for the scrapbook there. And just to kind of put a button on your experience out there, what's impressed you about the whole facility? Number one, what kind of sticks out that I didn't know before I started working there about the visitors complex?
Well, this is kind of interesting. So I grew up in the Midwest. My parents didn't travel much. And so I never got to see an Apollo launch. I never got to see a shuttle launch. And when I moved over here, I drove over to see the Falcon Heavy, the first Falcon Heavy launch. I drove in the middle of the night to see that. And I'd never seen a rocket launch before. And I've seen dozens since then, and it never gets old.
Right.
Always exciting to be able to watch a rocket leave Earth's atmosphere like that. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it has a special, when you're out there on the campus and all these foreign people. I mean, it's
Yeah. Oh, people from all over the world. I mean, it's just amazing how many people you meet, and they all get excited about it. This is a very special place that we live here at Kennedy Space Center.
Oh, absolutely. We call it the birth of America's space age right here in this delivery room, Brevard County.
Yeah.
People like Bart Martindale, who has co-hosted this show before, said in the month of August, you'd think all of Europe had moved to Kennedy Space Center because you don't hardly hear any English, he said.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's pretty much right. Yeah. I try to learn a little bit of some of the major languages so I can say welcome in about 4 or 5 different languages. So,
Well, that's nice of you.
Yeah.
Is there a barrier or no?
Not really. I mean, there are some people that can communicate better than others. Some know very little English. Some know enough to get by. But what I usually do is it's a show and tell. So, I can point to things and tell them things, and they pretty much get the idea of
Well, a rocket's a rocket in any country,
yeah,
and everybody on Earth has had dreams of rockets or something to do with rockets in there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And one of the most interesting tours I did, an Explore tour, is the one that you go out to see the rocket, the launch pads. And there was a school group from India. And they were all just enthralled. Of course, they've got a pretty good space program.
They do.
India does.
They do.
And it was the
India's got a
coolest thing. I mean, they were all just so excited about this, and they hung on my every word. And it's so neat to see that kind of enthusiasm. I mean, you don't see that sometimes in some places. And so it's just really cool to be able to see that. And it makes my day worthwhile when I can, especially young people like that, I can connect with them and get them inspired about space. And so
India landed on the south pole of the moon.
the Chandrayaan lander.
The Chandrayaan lander earlier this year. They're putting a lot into it. They actually have a manned program too, I've been reading about.
Yeah.
So to launch their own India astronauts. And if you didn't know it, India has the largest population on the earth. They've surpassed China by several million people, but they're both huge. But yeah, India has more, and I've read stories where the space program's doing great, but why don't you help our poverty and all that stuff? You're always going to have that, aren't you?
I think so.
The idea of science progressing is to help everybody.
Well, just think if we hadn't had the Apollo program, where we might have been technologically. I mean, we're the world leader in computer technology because of the Apollo program.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's many other things. People talk about Velcro. It's a whole lot more than Velcro.
Yeah.
And
Tang.
And Tang.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Didn't break out the Tang for you today, Lee. We'll do it the next time.
Well, now it's
You're on the
Doritos.
show here. Now it's Doritos because they took
Doritos in
those
space.
space
Yeah.
Doritos space in there.
That's right.
One thing that I find amusing is the 0G indicator.
I love that.
The little
Different
toy
stuffed
stuff
animals. Snoopy, of course.
And they sell out. Of course, I think it's a marketing ploy to get it on there. But
hey, that's what it takes to get people interested in space.
Well, that's a good point. And I want to know, where did the what's the 0G indicator? Was the porpoise with the big spiky nose on it? It's called,
the little was that narwhal?
Narwhal.
Yeah.
Narwhal.
Yeah.
I wonder where that narwhal is. Did it come back with Starliner, or did Sunny keep it up there with her and Butch on space station?
I don't know. I don't know the story about that.
Yeah, we got to find out what
It may
happened to the
still be up
narwhal.
there. Yeah, it's probably going to come back with them.
I'd say she'd want to bring it back with her as a good luck charm on
Yeah,
there.
I think so.
Well, if you got some questions with Lee Wilson, I'm enjoying the conversation, getting to meet him. Kindred spirits for sure. We're going to talk about his artwork, and this is off your screen grab, off your.
Yeah, it's a screenshot of me talking. Yeah. But it shows visions of the cosmos there, and that's what I call my series of cosmos art, the science-based art. And so it's basically one of those when I do art exhibitions, like there was one at the Museum of Science and Industry in Tampa, MOSI. And so that a lot of the design I did was for that exhibition. That was actually a Space for Art exhibition that Nicole Stott put together. And she had artists, astronaut, engineers that created art. Art and science go together quite a bit. And so there was a large exhibition at MOSI in Tampa of science and art together. And actually there were some. We didn't have any Alan Bean's originals. I would have loved to have seen some of those. But of course, Alan Bean, famously from Apollo 12, came back and painted a series about Apollo, and a very amazing artist. I never got to meet him. That was I was going to at Space Fest, the Space Fest 9, I think it was. And he was going to be there, and he was a mentor to a lot of the artists there, and inspired a lot of them. He'd go by and critique their work and encourage them, and I was going to have my work there, and I was really looking forward to meeting Alan Bean there. And it was going to be in July. I think it was like 2018, I believe it was. And he passed away on my birthday in May. So it was 6 weeks from meeting him. But I got to meet his daughter and his first wife. And I made a piece. It was called my therapy piece. And so I created a little Earthrise, but it was just a little sliver of the Earth coming up over the lunar horizon. And I painted that in Alan's style, and I gave it to his daughter. And so that was kind of my little connection to Alan through his daughter. And,
how would you describe his style? People that don't
very
know.
Textural. I'm actually influenced a lot by Alan Bean.
I can see that
He used moon dust taken from his outfits, his gloves, things that he brought back. He would put some of that into the paint and mix things into the paint. So technically they were mixed media paintings. It would take a lunar boot and create texture. He would create a painting with texture on it with the gesso.
Yeah, he wasn't going to. He didn't use a canvas as much as he did a layer of a plaster type material on there, and then he could make impressions with his boot.
He could take all the weight.
Also his hammer that he had on the moon. I know he put things in the hammer.
And so that was an influence on me, a lot of that texture and embedding things into the artwork itself. It gives it a presence that it wouldn't have otherwise.
We'll be talking more about this in November when we celebrate Apollo 12 on the moon. Yeah, Marty.
He even had imprints of his outer boot.
Yes.
Boot print.
Yeah.
Boot prints, exactly.
Yep. He put the boot print in there of his outer boot. We'll talk more about Alan Bean when we have Lee back. We'll definitely have you back in November and talk about art and Apollo 12 and talk about the science that we learned from Apollo, as you love educating about that.
That's right.
Here you are with a
That was at
painting.
Space
That's
Fest.
our background. Our Space
Mhm,
Fest was a wonderful event in Tucson. Kim and Sally Poor.
Mhm.
Kim, an awesome artist who lost his life to some horrible disease,
Ataxia.
a couple
Ataxia.
ataxia.
Mhm.
Um,
I can't remember the exact name of
their
it.
business is called Nova Space. Nova
Mhm.
Space is still in existence. You can buy astronaut autographs and 3D autograph things and artwork there. And I've got Kim Poor's Pistachio Moon in my uh, uh, office at home.
Mhm.
For those of you that know that painting of his. But so you're so now we're going to get into him talking about the science behind your artwork. There's one of your pretty
Mhm.
displays that
Yeah,
was
that was in the Atlantis building there.
in the Atlantis building there. There's where we stand to get the autographs on the left-hand side
So the
there.
one on the left, of course, is a 6 giant leaps. So my original was the one we saw in the previous slide, 6 feet by 3 feet. And I had meteorite fragments I put in each one of those. And
We're going to show you
I
that in the
started
detail
getting
here in a minute.
access to lunar and Martian meteorite fragments. And it was one of those things where I really couldn't afford to do that. But at the first Space Fest, I met a meteorite dealer, Top Meteorites, the name of the company, Dustin Dickens, wonderful guy from Colorado. And he said, I tell you what, I love your artwork. Let's trade artwork for meteorite material. And I traded that painting for $10,000 worth of meteorites. And so
Ooh.
I've used them over the years in my artwork, including the one that we have on the screen right now.
We're going to see some close-ups of where
6
that.
pieces of the moon in that painting, and they are located at each of the 6 Apollo landing sites.
All right, I can see 15 right there. That's Apollo 15 on the Apennine Ridge there of Hadley.
Yeah.
Let's go back this way. There's your nice display there. Another.
That was at the Museum of Science and Industry. That's where I created the Visions of the Cosmos, the brand, I guess you could call it, branding of that.
Nice
science-based
displays, very nice
Thank you,
displays there.
thank you.
And of course, once you invest that kind of money, you keep them packaged
art.
up
Dude,
and to use in future
that's the
things.
background of my
But these
sat
are
film
all of
YouTube
your
channel.
original works of
Yeah,
art
it is.
there.
Yeah.
And there's some other. So when you talk about space-based or science-based,
Mhm.
what does that mean when we're looking at your artwork?
Okay, well, the picture you see there is from my first solo exhibition at the Eastern Florida State College Planetarium, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was there in 2016
In Cocoa.
in Cocoa. And so science-based art is artwork that can introduce a science concept of some kind. And so it could be the type of material, it could be the subject matter. And so each of these paintings has some little science concept in it. And I cover things like astronomy, planetary science, astrophysics, and cosmology. And so there's a lot of different things you can talk about. But that was the idea. And this exhibition is what got me started on that, because I still lived over in Pasco County at the time, over on the west coast of Florida. And this was actually, mounted by the Brevard Cultural Alliance. I don't know if you've heard of that. the
Yeah, sure.
BCA.
Yeah, I'm involved.
And Lynn Brazino was the head of that at the time, of the Art and Public Spaces program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a member because I was in a local gallery here in Brevard County. And so they allowed me to participate, and you bring artwork, and they have a jury every month, and they would decide. And there were 30 locations throughout Brevard County that they would do these exhibitions. And so one of them was a group exhibition at the planetarium. And so I had some of my artwork there, but they also had photography. It was a group exhibition of different types of things, space related. And so it turns out that the planetarium liked my work so much, they asked BCA to let me do a solo exhibition of just my cosmos art. And that's what I did. And it went from, I think it was February of 2016 all the way to August. They actually extended it, normally about 4 months, and they extended it to 6 months. And so I would drive over from the west coast of Florida on Friday and Saturday nights and do docent tours and just take people around and talk about the science behind the artwork.
Actually, we got a picture of you giving
There,
a tour
there it is right there. That was that event. And I started, kind of talking about the science, playing games, like some of them that have a meteorite fragment, and especially the young people, like, where is the meteorite? Can you find the meteorite in this painting? And we could do, colder, warmer, and they would find it.
Gotcha.
And we'd talk about that. But then I'd talk about basic science concepts, like when you're looking at the stars, you're looking back in time because they're so far away, and it takes that amount of time for light to get there. 8 minutes just to get from the sun to here, and so it's just one of those things where I can use that as a visual tool. And I would, in this particular one, where a group of young people were there, I always carry a meteorite fragment. Let's see if did I put one here?
Got some there with you.
Yeah, I have a little meteorite fragment in my hand. I'd had it in the pocket. And then at the very end, after I talked about the last painting, I'd hold up a meteorite fragment like this, and I'd say,
Marty's going to zoom in on you
okay,
there.
who would like to hold a real meteorite? And I explained that they got here from space. And I explained how the ones got here. Let's see, there we go. Like looking in a mirror. So this is an iron nickel meteorite from the asteroid belt between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. And these are fairly common as meteorites go. And so I would ask them who wants to hold one. And of course, they'd all hold up their hands. And I'd pick maybe one of the younger ones closer to me. And they'd hold out their hand. And as I put it in their hand, I would say, this is the oldest object you will ever hold in your hand. It's 4.5 billion years old. And then I would explain what a billion is, because that's a big number for young people to comprehend. And then I would say that's essentially the age of our solar system. And you could just see their little heads explode. It was the coolest thing. And at that moment, I realized the magic of being able to use artwork to explain science concept. And that's when I started changing the focus of my artwork to what I now call science-based art. And that's what it's about.
Sounds good. We got a question here for Lee Wilson.
You have a question from Mitch, Man Space. Are there plans to go back to Mossy?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Are there plans to go back to Mossy, M-O-S-I?
Oh, Mossy. Oh,
Mossy?
Are there what that goes back?
Plans.
Plans. Oh,
Plans.
yeah. Well, there's always possibilities. I'm hoping to restart doing a lot of these science-based art exhibitions, and Mossy does have traveling exhibitions, things that come around. So I would love to come back there. If Mossy, if you're listening, let us know.
Museum
if
of
you would like to
Science and
do.
Industry. Now, is that in St. Pete
That's in
or
it's
Tampa?
just north of Tampa. Just in Tampa proper. It was near there. I think there's a university nearby
Okay.
there.
And that's sort of the home of Nicole Stott, too, with her outreach and stuff like that.
Originally from Clearwater. I think she lives in St. Pete now.
Yeah. But she's big on there. Good.
Yeah.
Mitch.
If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have been in that exhibition. She's opened a lot of doors for me. And she owns some of my artwork too.
Yeah, she's a great person, and we had her and her husband, Chris, on Stay Curious. We're going to have Mitch Rothman on tomorrow, who asked that question, Man Space.
Okay.
Looking forward to having Mitch in here. And by the way, I didn't thank you both for rescheduling. Marty and I got COVID.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I
that's
got
what we're
Marty.
talking about. Okay.
But I got Marty. I got COVID. Gave it to Marty. Gave it to
Yeah.
everybody in the building. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I've had it enough. Thank you.
We all had to cancel a lot of stuff, and it hurt. So
Yeah.
thanks to bring you both back. And
Oh,
yeah, we're looking forward to having Mitch on tomorrow and talk about whatever Mitch wants to talk about. But he's another influencer. With his Facebook page has 16,000 followers
Oh,
on it.
nice. Okay.
Which is called
Very cool.
NASA Manned Space. And Mitch loves the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo,
Mhm.
Skylab, and ASTP.
Okay. Very nice.
And that's what their Facebook's all about. So we're looking forward to that on there. So this facility that was in Cocoa at the Eastern Florida State College
Mhm.
was wrecked by Hurricane Irma. Yeah, Irma it was. That took the roof off the planetarium. There you are with Keith Sewell.
Mhm.
Keith, hello to you. He's in Arkansas putting
Hey,
together.
Keith.
He's putting together some astronomy outreach in the Arkansas area there that he's asked me to be part of. And happy to do that for you, Keith. He was one of the educators here at our museum and involved there at the planetarium. We missed that planetarium, and our astronomy club would meet there, and a whole bunch of other things going on, and missed those laser light rock and roll shows in the planetarium. But believe it or not, the closest planetarium we have is in Sanford,
Wow.
and it's only about 100-seat a deal there that Derek Demeter does a good job
Well,
manning. But
we need a world-class planetarium back in Brevard County.
well, they've made an agreement with this college for their mobile outfit that they have to bring to Kennedy Space Center once in a while.
Oh, okay, that's
And
cool.
you might be hearing more about that.
Okay.
But
Oh, one
uh,
of the things that's interesting about this exhibition, uh, Keith did a video of me talking about the artwork, which is on my YouTube page. So if you want to take a look at that, he did the video. It wasn't, high end. We didn't mic up and that kind of stuff, but it talks a little bit about some of the pieces there and the science behind it. So I thank you to Keith for doing that for me.
all right, we'll be in touch with him. Make sure he sees this of you. He stays in touch with me. So we're going to look at this science-based art here. And for those of you unfamiliar with the moon, this is a real area of the moon. Okay, it's showing you about the middle section of it on there. You got the big crater Copernicus.
Yeah, this isn't the whole like face of the moon that we can see. This is cropped in on just the areas where we landed with
Right,
Apollo.
which is about right in the middle there.
Exactly.
And you've got these little dots here. There's one above you right there.
Yeah.
There's two off to your right. There's one up above your head. And we're going to look at those in detail here to
All
show
right, there you go. Right.
what are those.
So the one with the 11 there that's just right by my head is in the Sea of Tranquility, and that's where Apollo 11 landed on July 20th, 1969.
But what is that you put there?
That is an actual piece of the moon.
All right, a lunar meteorite.
Now you're supposed to ask me, did you
How
steal
did you
those
get
from
that?
NASA?
Yeah, did you steal those from NASA?
No, I didn't. They got here on their own. And this is the science behind this painting, is how I got pieces of the moon in that painting, and they're lunar meteorite fragments. Now, the way we know they're lunar is because we know enough material about the composition of the moon that they were able to be certified as lunar material. But how did they get here? Well, they got here on their own. Now, early in the solar system, there was a lot of bombardment between all the different hard planetary bodies, the solid planets. And sometimes a particularly large one would hit the surface of, say, like the moon. And it was so powerful, it would bring material all the way into space. It wouldn't fall back to the moon. It'd go all the way into space. And
Reached escape velocity.
escape velocity, and it floated around in space. And eventually some of those pieces found their way to Earth, came through the atmosphere as meteors. And once they hit the ground, they become meteorites. And there are certain places where it's easier to find them, places like Northwest Africa in the desert, in the Antarctic area there, and also in the northern tundra regions. They tend to be easier to find. Also, they're magnetic, and so if you want to be able to tell, you have a metal detector kind of thing, and you can tell if they're magnetic because they have a lot of iron and nickel content typically. There's the iron mine, and then there are the chondrites that are more stony type. Now, there are people that know a lot more about meteorites than I do, but it was fascinating to me to be able to embed these into this artwork because it gives it a presence. It honors the Apollo program because it's each of the 6 lunar landings from Apollo, but it also has a piece of the moon in each of those landing sites. And so actually you've got it open there where you can see, of course, Apollo 11. Most people know about the Sea of Tranquility. Apollo 12, kind of an interesting story about that. When Apollo, the Saturn rocket was going into the atmosphere, Apollo 12 got hit by lightning twice. And you probably know the SCE to Ox story.
Yeah, right. Every
John
space
Aaron,
hipster does.
Exactly. And so it was able to continue to the moon. And they landed in a place called the Ocean of Storms, which I think is kind of interesting that they went through a storm to get to the moon, and then they landed. And of course, the oceans and the mare, the seas, are basically ancient lava beds from large impacts. And so a lot of the basalt was brought up from the interior of the moon, and it's darker. It's mainly basalt. And then Apollo 14, of course, you notice there's no 13 on there. That's because Apollo 13 had some technical difficulties, and they basically did a free return trajectory around the moon and came back, so they didn't land. So Apollo 14 landed in an area there. It's called Frau Morrow, and they wanted to land in an area that had, do you see the large, is that Copernicus, I think? I forget which one that is. The largest. Copernicus brought, you can see the radial lines that came out for the rays that came out from it, and they landed in an area where some of that came down, and that was to be able to find out, they could find material that came from that part of the moon. And so that's where they landed there. And then the last 3 missions had the lunar rover with them, and so they were able to go further. So Apollo 15 is up in the area up there. So we had, let's see, Frau Morrow, and then I think that's the Hadley
Rill. Yep, that's my
is up
favorite
there.
one.
And so you
15.
can see where they landed, right where the edge of that area is right there. That's kind of brought up, and so that's a real geologically interesting area. And then they landed in the Highlands. Let's see, what's the
16 is Descartes. over
Descartes?
your
Yeah,
head there.
there's a large crater called Descartes,
Which they thought was volcanoes
There we
were
go.
there, but they weren't.
right there.
And
And so that's more of a mountainous region. So that would be some of the material in more of the upper crusts area of the moon. And then finally, Taurus Littrow, where Apollo 17 landed, which is right at the edge there between Amaria and a Highlands region there. And so that's where they sent the first scientist to walk on the moon, Harrison Schmitt. He was a geologist. And so they found some really interesting things there. It was an orange rock material. It's kind of like a silicate type material, which is kind of interesting. The moon is not all black and white or shades of gray. I think, was it 15 that found peridot, or it's what do they call it? It's a green, it's made of iron and magnesium. Olivine.
olivine,
Which that was one of the last things that we needed to figure out. That basically, the Earth and the moon were made of the same stuff. It was the upper layers, and that helped us solidify the leading theory of now where we got the moon came from the research that we got, the science that we learned from Apollo. And so that theory now is that the moon actually came from the Earth. There was a large Mars-side planetary body very early on. It was all that bombardment. Sideswiped the Earth, didn't hit it directly, it sideswiped it, and it brought a lot of the upper layers of the crust of the Earth up into space that went around the Earth and coalesced into the moon. And a lot of the material of, I think it's called Theia. It's like the Greek mythology, the mother of the moon. And so all of the heavier elements went down into the core of the Earth. So we have this most dense planet in our solar system. We have a very large iron core. The moon has a very small iron core. And actually, through the seismic testing that we did of the moon, we also turns out the moon's core still is molten. We thought the moon was frozen solid until Apollo. And a lot of the research said there's actually, it doesn't have a magnetic core anymore. The iron core is not spinning, which is how you get your magnetic field, but it's still molten in there. And we learned, if it hadn't been for Apollo, we would not have learned all of that we now know about the moon.
Great recap there of why we landed in those places. They just weren't arbitrary places. You see the first 3 missions went along the equator because that was easier flight plan, and then they went up and down up there. Why don't we hold this here?
Okay.
Just grab that picture here, painting, to show you what we've got here, the approximate size of it. As I say, welcome to Doug Forest. I got my up here. Yeah, set it on there so people can see. The size of this is beautiful. And of course, it has a price on it. But you can, and you're going, oh, how exotic to have a moon rock up here. But you sell them at the gift shop at the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex.
Not yet.
Isn't there a little sliver of a moon in there?
Well, they do have meteorites that they sell there.
Yeah.
They have lunar meteorite fragments for sale. They're not mine.
Right. Yeah, lunar meteorites for sale.
Exactly. Yes.
And they're a couple $100. They can be affordable in there. But as you see, what a beautiful work of art. It's on a canvas here. When you look up close, Lee's got a lot of little, I like your little squiggly lines and how you got the relief in there. What did you build it up with? What's your material?
Florida beach sand and seashell hash. So this all came from Florida beaches.
Really?
We have a sand and shell collection.
And glue?
Catalog. Actually, it's mixed in with the paint itself. It's acrylic paint. So it's the paint that's holding it all together.
All right. This would look great in any space cave out
and
there.
then if you want to see the back real quick.
Oh, yeah. Show the back of it here, how he does it there. Lunar meteorite fragments have been placed at each of the Apollo landing sites. And you did this in 2021. And there's your lunar meteorite.
Right. That's the documentation, the certification that shows these are lunar material. This is actually, I made a series of 6 of these.
So these are the little 6 different
Right.
Thanks
Each
for-
one of them has the information about how much they weigh and the size.
Wow,
We
okay.
measured them with a micrometer to get the exact size of them, so it's all documented. And then I made a series of 6. So it's I made 6 paintings in honor of the 6 Apollo landings. So this is 4 of 6. And
30 by 40 inches there,
yeah.
Steve
Do you know
Jokums.
who owns the first one? 1 of 6.
No,
Tom Stafford's daughter.
Tom Stafford's daughter bought the first one. That's great. Good for you.
And then another one is owned by an entrepreneur from Detroit, and so there are 4 left.
Well, we want to say hello to all of our fans, Marty. Dave Stangy's up in Michigan, and he says hello to Lee and the rest of the Stay Curious gang. Happy Monday. And Man Space is welcoming Marty back. Robert Law is watching up in Dundee, Scotland, enjoying his evening
cool.
cocktail.
Nice.
Bert Dick says hi
Hey, Bert.
to all of us. And Bert talks about something here in a minute. Carlton Bailey, you know Carlton?
Yeah, I think so.
CB says howdy, have everybody on a Monday. Howdy, Lee, Mark, and the museum minions. Dean Babcock says hello. Glad that you're back, Marty. We have got one of the most intelligent viewership. We really do.
I can imagine.
Everybody, because they keep correcting me and keeping me straight out there. There's Jack Kennedy. Gary Gerald is our farmer up in the Vidalia Onion area of Georgia,
Okay.
and he's been on our show. William
Wow.
Whiting, great to hear from William. He is a Michigan Spartan up there, about to meet the Buckeyes here in 2 weeks. William. And Bert saying about Jeff Coons, our NSS board member. Chantel Bear designed the containers for artwork called the Moon Phases. All right. And that was part of the Intuitive Machines launch.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool.
Connie McDaniel, one of our ACE volunteers, she's enjoying the interview and welcoming Marty back. Tommy UCX says, nice to see you, Lee,
Hi,
today.
Tom.
He's,
He's
of
a
course,
great
in
photographer.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Nick Sedler, thank you. Nick's saying another great show, and they're always great when I'm not the guest on here. But you are really strong. Y'all are watching my solo shows too, and we really appreciate that. Connie says it's near UCF and USF in Tampa, Mosey, up there.
Oh, that's right. USF.
And Jack Kennedy's asking, Lee, did Neil deGrasse Tyson display your art in his studio?
Well, there's a story behind that. Okay, so
let's hear it.
Let's tell you the story. Okay.
Of course, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the great communicator, now he took the mantle. Him
Yeah.
and from Sagan, him and Bill Nye.
I like to say Neil deGrasse Tyson turned me into a science-based artist because
Okay.
it's all his fault. Because it was the Space-Time Odyssey series that converted me from doing my tropical and beach series to the Cosmos series, which I had not even occurred to me until I saw that. And that was the inspiration. He was my muse. And I started doing that. And so years later, when I moved to Florida, lived in the Land Lakes area there for a while. And a woman that I met lived right downtown Tampa there. We were together for a while, and she knew how much I was a fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson and the work that he did, and of course Carl Sagan. And he was doing a lecture tour series coming to Tampa. And she secretly bought VIP tickets to this. And so she surprised me with them, and I'm going, by the way, thank you, Kelly, for doing that. I just like, this is cool because these are not cheap tickets to get to do the VIP part. And what that means is that once you do the tour, he does the presentation, everybody leaves except these few people right up in the front, and they get to do question and answer and talk directly with Neil. And so in the process of doing that, I watched Space-Time Odyssey again, and there's one particular episode called Hiding in the Light that's basically the birth of astrophysics, which is stellar spectroscopy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I watched that, and I saw how emotional he got when he was talking about Joseph Fraunhofer, who did the first stellar spectrograph. And there's these there you go, perfect. So what you do is you take the light from the sun, or any star for that matter, but this is a portrait of the sun, basically the sole name of our star, and those gaps there, that you split the light into with a prism, And then if you look at it carefully enough under magnification, there are these little gaps in there. And that's where in the atmosphere of the sun is absorbing those elements. And so you can tell what the atmosphere of the sun is made of by looking at where those lines are. The two in the middle there, the two double yellow lines where it's yellow, that represents sodium. So there's a small amount of sodium, and all of these others represent different elements, and you can tell what that atmosphere
It's
is
a
made
painting of yours of the
And it's
sun
a
spectrum.
Right. And so I used texture. Now I made this all with paint. I didn't use beach sand or seashells in this one, but I do kind of like a controlled Jackson Pollock. So I used paint flat and I drizzled the paint in all these lines, well, in this case, vertical lines. And then I put the color over that. And then I used strips of wire and belts to I used on the back of the painting is actually the stellar spectrograph I used as a reference, and I put them all in where these elements were, and it's a painting of the sun, but as a stellar spectrograph. And so when I saw how emotional Neil got when he talked about that it was basically the birth of astrophysics, his field of study. And I thought the perfect thing to make for him is a stellar spectrograph painting. And so I made this and entitled it Hiding in the Light, which represents those lines. And so we went to the theater and we had the staff take it to his dressing room before the show. And then when we got to the end, I asked him a question. I had several different people, about a dozen different questions. I asked him a question about the Fraunhofer lines. He didn't have a clue at the time. So he explained about the Fraunhofer lines, why, isn't the sun just mainly helium and hydrogen? There's all these other elements, where they come from. And so he explained about that. And then at the end I said, so how did you like your painting? And then he started going on about how much he loved the painting. And he compared it to a Van Gogh, the texture in there. And so of course, he couldn't take it on the plane with him. He's doing a tour. So we shipped it to the Hayden Planetarium, where he's director there in New York City. And so I was watching Star Talk, which is the podcast that he does, and I saw it in the background. And he has all these other things. And his favorite painting is Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. So when he compared my work to a Van Gogh, I was like, thank you, Neil. And so he has Starry Night up above him, but below that on a table with some other things around it was my painting. And I'm thinking, oh my God.
That's sweet. That's cool.
Obviously, he didn't just toss it in a closet. He put it there because he liked it.
Or give it to somebody and say, here, I got plenty of stuff. Starry Night is a good painting, of course.
It is.
But Van Gogh's, the one where he's got the Big Dipper. Have you seen that one?
Well, of course,
there's a Starry Night that is the Big Dipper, though.
Right,
it's definitely the 7 stars of the Big Dipper.
It's assumed that
over
he had
the
a
Seine
vision
River
issue.
or wherever he was.
So he had like astigmatism and some vision issues, is what we think.
Yeah.
But Tyson went back in the stellar records, and he went back to the time frame that painting was made, and he said that the stars were in the right locations in that painting.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. I love that archaeological astronomy.
Archaeological astronomy,
where they tried to see what was in the sky of events and the moon phase at the Normandy invasion. And
so that's another example of science-based art.
Good in there. Well, we're enjoying this conversation with Lee Wilson. This is just we're breaking him in here on Stay Curious here.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hope you're enjoying
I'd
yourself.
love to come back and talk about this.
Well, we will have you back, of course. But we're enjoying about your art and going out here. We want to let everybody know that you have a Facebook presence. You have a website. Okay, this is off of your website there. You have ways to partner with you on there that I think is pretty clever. And ways to support an artist is the way you have there.
Community of people that want to support the work that I do. Because it's really not about selling artwork as much as it is creating it to educate. And, and if I do sell a painting, it's to further the cause of doing the science-based art. So eventually I want to get to the point where I don't really need to rely on that anymore.
It's science-based with interpretive artistic license.
Right. It's art appreciation, but also learning about astronomy and planetary science and cosmology and astrophysics and those kinds of things.
And we've got so many friends of the museum that are artists. Chris Callie, we know you're out there. Doug Forrest.
IAAA buddies.
Your IAAA buddies. We're going to see a big picture of you all here in just a minute with that. There's from your website, there you are with Nicole Stott, and something that we want at our Shuttle Fest is one of those Art Deca spacesuits.
The Space for Art Foundation she's doing is really doing
Yeah.
wonderful work. And it's
uh,
basically using art therapy with a space theme.
yes,
And she's doing some wonderful work there. I think
art for
in the Maldives. I think they're in the Maldives
uh,
right now doing
and that's her. That's Nicole Stott,
Mhm.
who 150 days on the space station, Expedition 20, I think,
Mhm.
and then she was STS 133, the
I got my pen.
the
I got
ultimate
this
flight, yeah,
33 pen right
which Tim Gagnon helped put that over the edge. A Robert McCall
there. Oh, really?
sketch that
I didn't know that. Hey,
McCall
Tim.
died in the middle of that,
Okay.
and Tim Gagnon and his buddy Jorge
Hmm.
got to finish that up on there.
That's cool.
Very
That's
familiar
really
with
cool.
that. So, Nicole Stott, one of the hardest working astronauts out there.
Yeah.
She's always doing appearances.
And such a wonderful
her and
person.
her and Don Thomas. I
Mhm.
mean, another astronaut just out there. You probably see Don Thomas
Yeah. Oh,
popping
yeah.
in and out
Yeah,
of the
he's a
Space
regular
Center.
over there. Yeah.
Yeah, in there. So, but
And one
no,
of the
she-
things I like to say about Nicole is for a person that's been to space, she's very down to earth.
yeah,
And she is, and she cares about people, and she's trying to do things to help the planet. You know, we're fellow Earthlings, and I love her
yeah,
perspective.
yeah.
and she's
we're
a fan of the
Earthlings all the way.
the
We
pale blue dot philosophy, that Carl
Uh,
Sagan put forward.
I got her signature over there.
Oh,
There,
there
there
you
she
go.
is with Leinbach.
Oh, okay,
There.
excellent.
That's one of my favorite pictures. When
Yeah.
Discovery landed, we have all kinds of stuff around there. There's
Yeah.
Nikki with Mike Leinbach on the runway after Discovery landed, which will come up on 13 years from now, 12 years from now. Wow, time's flying on there.
Yeah,
But you
That's
get a
pretty
chance
cool.
to see that lady do.
and she
uh,
painted she created the first painting in space. It was a watercolor in zero gravity on
Mhm.
the ISS, and to hear her talk about the problems that she had painting in that environment, it was fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Talk
It
about that.
is. The paint, you can actually see the
Surface
the
tension.
ball, the surface tension of water is
Mhm.
it balls up
Mhm.
like a flame does too. A flame doesn't go up and down, it's a ball.
Right.
And then the surface tension, when she put color in it, it's like poking it in there and you see the colors just streaming there. I love
Yeah.
that. Love
That
that.
is so neat.
Well, we're ending our little conversation here with you
Mhm.
to talk about something fun and far-fetched.
Okay.
The movie Fly Me to the Moon that you were
yeah,
in.
I was, yeah. Few
I
little
auditioned
cameos
for
in-
that. When
Did
that
you really?
audition call,
Oh, neat.
I thought, well, I'd be a good news guy
Mhm.
with a camera or something like that.
Sure, yeah.
And so those are that have been living under a rock. This
Yeah.
is a very fictionalized version of the Apollo
Mhm.
program. That's why I call it fun and far-fetched. But it was very entertaining for me. And
Oh,
Scarlett Johansson, certainly a beautiful woman, and Channing
Channing
Tatum
yeah.
is certainly the eye candy for you ladies out there. So
Yeah.
it was a
Oh,
win-win
it
with your
was a win.
date wherever you went in there.
That's right.
But here you are.
Yeah, I was pretending to be a news photographer there in that blue blazer you can see right
Okay.
over there. This is the kind of thing that David Chudwin did back in the day. It's like, what was it, Teenage Science Space Reporter? Or
Yeah.
something
Hi,
like
David
that.
Chudwin. He's
Yeah. And
watches
so
occasionally.
I basically was in character. I was trying to, I need to move around and get the right shot. So I was kind of weaving in and everything like that. And so, of course, the actors that were there, I am right there
you
trying
are
to
in
get the
back
shot,
there.
even though I was behind all these
Channing
other
Tatum.
guys.
Marty's got my.
And they're all people that live in the area. You're all Talk of Titusville did a post on Facebook shortly before they were doing this, looking for extras, and
Yeah.
you was signed up with it's called Front Runner Casting in Orlando, and you put in a profile, and they picked several hundred people to be extras in this movie, and luckily I got to be one.
That's cool. That's cool. Nick Sedler's watching. Nick's another intelligent space geek, and I'm sure he's enjoying this today. Thank you all for watching today.
Oh, there's
Yeah,
my
I
big
love that
theme.
picture. Yeah, you got a close up there.
Yeah. This was
Yeah.
supposed to be, this was the VIP stands for the Apollo 11 launch. Now, I don't know if you remember, if seen film from back in the day, but there were a lot of people wearing these white hats. they were giving them to protect him against the Florida sun.
Yeah.
And so they gave me one of those hats. And so there were, for some reason, I was the only one shown in that scene wearing a white hat. But this was like a fraction of a second before we stood up as soon as the rocket was taking off for Apollo 11.
Did they have an official badge that was the moon?
They did. They did. They had
'cause-
badges that we were wearing,
Okay.
showing that for the
Because those come
launch.
up on our auction all the time for
Yeah.
$200-300.
Yeah, of course, these were replicas, but that was pretty
And,
cool. Now, one of the interesting things in this scene when we were filming, it took all day. They wound up filming the Apollo 11 launch during the day, and then the Apollo 10 launch at night, even though Apollo 17 was the only night
Yeah,
launch.
right. That was
But I wasn't gonna,
Yeah.
because they said, "Oh, we have NASA people telling
Marty's
us about this."
elbowing everybody going,
And one
Apollo
of the
10
things-
at night. What the heck?
Exactly.
He was falling out of his chair
Right.
at the IMAX theater.
And well, apparently it made it easier to film these scenes, to do it all in one day. So we had a daytime and a nighttime. But the story called for Apollo 10 in the movie to happen before, of course, before Apollo 11. So
Yeah.
they didn't do Apollo 17. But the interesting thing was when they, said action, we were supposed to pretend the rocket was coming up off pad 39A, and the cameras, they had those big giant TV cameras back in the day. They did action, and the cameras just went right up like that. And I'm going, no, wait a minute. It takes 12 seconds for the Saturn V to clear the tower.
Yeah.
And I asked him about that. I said, well, we've got NASA people. Don't worry about it. We got, I said, okay, are you sure? But that's not right. And she said, we'll fix it in post. And, it wasn't an issue, but it was just kind of funny to see that. It's like, it's all about the story. And it was pretty accurate. I mean, in a lot of things. Of course, the flight director was not that person's name. I forget who was the flight director for the Apollo program. Do you guys remember? I don't remember. The mission director was, of course, Gene Kranz,
Right.
and mission control, but in
Walt
launch control.
Capron.
Yeah, that sounds.
Walt Capron was.
Yeah, I think so. I couldn't remember, but so they made a fictitious name for the flight director, but apparently the character was supposedly based on Gene Kranz.
Loosely based on
loosely
Gene
based
Kranz.
on Gene Kranz, flying
Yeah,
in Korea,
I'm not
and this
gonna-
kind of stuff. Yeah, loosely.
There's
Yeah.
it's just a fun movie, really.
One of the things I thought was cool in the movie, the scenes they showed at Pad 34,
Yeah.
the Apollo 1,
Oh,
I thought that was amazing that they put that in there because it was such a pivotal moment in the Apollo
absolutely,
program.
yeah.
And to put that in there. Of course, there were no plants around
No.
Pad 34 that he was using.
It did treat the Apollo 1 fire with a lot of reverence.
Respect, yes.
And the second star of this was actually the pad 34
Mhm.
that you've been to. I've
Yeah, I've
been
been
lucky to be
there.
to the structure that's out
Yeah,
there.
it's a
But it
sacred
was
spot.
left, Channing is going out there
Mhm.
and tending a garden because he was close to the crew and felt
Right.
responsible for their
Well, he
deaths.
was the flight
and-
director
and-
at
yeah.
the plugs out test.
Yeah,
He
and
was
the
in
plugs
charge.
out test,
Yeah.
and that was part of the story. But you
Mhm.
know what? Talking to the Astronaut Memorial Foundation that's over the Space Mirror
Mhm.
and has an event out there. They're going to expand the Apollo 1 January 27th event honoring Pad 34 and the
Oh, good.
astronauts there. That's going to
Good.
be a more expanded, more public event. And
Okay.
it's been a very private event over the last decades. And I've been privileged to go out there with the Apollo 1 Foundation and other people. So you're going to see more of Pad 34 on a tourist bend
Oh,
out
good.
there.
I hope
Is,
so.
is what
Yeah, we
they
haven't
want
been
to
doing
do
the
with
Cape
that.
tours.
Well, they
since-
did have a tour, a special VIP tour that was took like 50 people out there
Mhm.
to the beach.
Okay.
We
Oh,
we
really?
could pick up beach. We couldn't take any pictures.
Didn't go to the beach house.
We didn't
did
go to
you?
the beach house, but we went to the beach by Pad 34. Couldn't take pictures.
Okay.
Still national security.
Yeah. Well,
You
it's
better
close to,
believe it. There's people
Pad
in the bushes
37.
out there. Okay.
with ULA Pad 37, they
Yeah.
do a lot of national security missions. So they
Right.
couldn't take pictures in that
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah. They don't want you to take pictures in
Right.
that direction. Also,
Yeah.
I've just really enjoyed meeting you and sharing this with you. Known you outside the peripheral, like you know me.
Yeah.
In the world there to make in our space world here. Great to make a connection, and here you are connecting with.
Oh, yeah.
with-
Space Fest. Yeah.
What year was this? You remember?
Well, I see Tim Gagnon right over there on the edge there. I
That's
think
Kim
he's-
Gagnon,
and
and
then
there's
I'm wearing the white shirt.
Ronnie Woods is right there.
Yeah.
Talked to Ronnie the other day, an artist right in the middle
Yeah.
is Chris Callie
Mhm.
with a colorful shirt there.
Yeah.
and,
And Aldo Spadoni is over there. I see Aldo.
Yes,
He was president of the IAAA for a long time.
all kinds of wonderful
And
artists.
Simon Krieger, he's a wonderful artist. Does a
You're,
lot
you're
of
in the
great
black shirt with the white tie
astronaut.
there on
Yeah,
the right hand
that's
side
me
there.
over there. That's right.
And
Yeah.
of course, we all know Tim Gagnon, the patch guy.
Yeah.
He's got 19 patches, I think, floating on the or stickers, decals on the ISS floating
Mhm.
around the Earth right now. So, shout out to all you people there. We hope
Yeah.
our shuttle fest can reach the
I hope
stature of
so.
this
That would
thing.
be great.
There's Doug Forrest right there
Yeah.
with the
Oh, yeah.
colorful shirt on next to the guy in the purple shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Doug, out there. He's going to tell me what year that is. He probably
Oh, and
knows
I don't think
that.
we mentioned what IAAA is, in case.
Right,
It's the
IAAA,
Mhm.
International.
Association of Astronomical Artists.
Okay, and it's a
And
group
some
that
really, like Robert McCall, a lot of
Callie.
Don Davis, a lot of, really important people. I think that one of the, I'm not sure, well, and Alan Bean was a member
Alan
of the
Bean.
IAAA.
Nikki
and
Stott was in
Nicole
there, I
Stott,
know.
yeah.
How about was Alexei Leonov in it?
I think so.
'Cause
I
he
think
was
so.
a-
It's an international
Yeah,
organization.
he was truly the first space
Yeah,
artist
Alexei
to do
yeah.
a sketch.
I
in
think he did
space.
the first drawing. He did
the first,
pencil drawing.
first
pencil sketch.
spacewalker, Alexei Leonov.
Yeah.
On there. So just wanted to give you some love there with all your buddies there, your
Yeah.
brother in there. Go check out his website, his
Stern look on my face.
your YouTube is called
It is E. Lee Wilson Jr. Science-Based Art.
just E. Lee Wilson
And
Jr.
if you
there.
do an internet search for E. Lee Wilson Jr., I am the only person with that name on the internet. So you can search for me on YouTube, or for my website is eleewilsonjr.com. So I'm making a presence there.
Great. I've enjoyed this. I know you've all enjoyed that out there. Is there something you wanted to share with us that I didn't ask you, Lee?
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't been to the museum here in about 7 or 8 years. So when I first got here, I got a chance to walk around and see all the cool exhibits you guys have here. And it's amazing all the history that is here. And just, looking at the consoles and all of the things that are here and the memorabilia, the things that have all that rich history
Yeah.
of our space program, because it is the human spirit to explore. And I think what you guys are doing to preserve the history of that is just wonderful.
And contrast us between the big boy that you work for, Kennedy
Oh,
Visitors
Delaware
Complex,
North.
and us.
Oh, they don't have this kind of stuff there.
Yeah,
I mean, we
explain
have-
that to people. They have stuff,
Right.
but the stuff we have
Yeah.
is
It's a little more granular here. There's a lot more detail on things. We have, the big stuff, like we have a lunar meteorite piece we brought back from Apollo 17. People can reach in and actually touch it, which is really
right.
cool.
Yeah.
Alan
Little
Bean has
triangle.
that wonderful
I know it well.
mural there. Yes, the little triangle. Well, they wanted to, slice it smooth so there are no jagged edges people
Right,
could get
yeah.
hurt on. Apollo 17, I've told it that's where it was brought back from. We have the lunar lander that was supposedly being used for Apollo 15. Now we have the only one like that in the world. Of course, Marty, you used to build these things. Well, there were 2 others. There's one in Washington, D.C. and one up in Long Island. How's it called? Cradle of Aviation
Yeah.
Museum.
Marty was just up there.
But those 2 were never completed. This one that we have was considered to be flight ready, and it's the only one like it on the planet.
You ought to hear
So-
Marty talk about it if you ever get a chance
It's
around
the
there.
coolest. Oh yeah, it was an honor. I
Young-
got a chance. He joined me for one of my tours once, and it was a real honor to do that. for
Yeah.
him.
People don't know the difference between Kapton foil and
yeah,
and a mylar. Okay.
that's right.
Uh,
There's a big difference, and it's like it's not gold, it's not copper, foil. It's actually that material, and it's the thin layer of aluminum that they spray on. It's such a thin layer, and that's all it takes to reflect the light of the sun to keep those tanks from getting overheated.
yeah.
You got a built-in vacuum, like a thermos, and you don't need anything more than just something to reflect the light away. It's pretty amazing.
Well, we could go on and on, but we'll go back another day. All right.
I got to
Lee?
put another $1 in my jar.
There,
about
yes,
talking about
yes. I get that's a good way to end that, is to show you the jar there we're talking about there. Okay, there's your swear jar, and there's your
talking
jar.
about space when I was asked.
I can relate to that here with my cup here. And I'll say it again, Marty, you give the best Christmas presents. And he's shopping already. I know he
There
is
you
already.
go. That's awesome.
You already bought it. All right, buddy. And God bless Karen in her memory, our executive director passed away. She bought me this shirt. And we miss her dearly, but we're going to continue on in her spirit here, and we do celebrate the spirit of the space worker here.
Yeah.
And though we love Kennedy Visitors Complex, we know that people find our little niche here unique and
nearly
and
400,000
satisfying.
people that
Absolutely,
program together.
absolutely. Lee,
Yeah.
thank you so
Yeah.
much, buddy, for
Yeah, it was wonderful
breaking
to
the
be
ice
here.
with us here on
Yeah,
Stay
exactly.
Curious, and we're going to welcome you back. And if you get out to the Kennedy Space Center, tag along with Lee when he's out there. So tomorrow we got another influencer, Mitch Rothman, and can't wait to get Mitch in this seat and have him tell us some stories, just like you today.
There you go.
And he actually, did you send it to me or did Mitch? There's a picture of you two together at the Scholarship Foundation art
Okay,
show.
I think he must have sent it.
Okay,
To me.
well, I'll show that.
Yeah,
I'll-
the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation. Yeah.
up there. And so appreciate it again, buddy.
Yeah,
Another
it was great.
handshake
It was
there. We'll
wonderful.
have you back.
Ad
Hope you all
Astra.
enjoyed it today. Mitch Rothman, you're up next. So you're all going to enjoy that Space Influencer on Stay Curious tomorrow. Then the rest of the week, we're going to get into Shuttles of the Month. We're going to talk about that wonderful Polaris Dawn mission. My God, what a great mission.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they did exactly what they said they were going to do.
They did.
And learned a lot in the process. So until next time, on behalf of the American Space Museum, I'm Marquette saying we can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us. Thank you.